A very good morning to one and all present here. I'm Orithro, and I would like to welcome you all on the behalf of CIIE, the Department of Pharmacy, and the Department of Biological Sciences to day two of the webinar. Yesterday morning, we had our inauguration, and Dr. Harshvardhan graced us with his insightful words. Our guests of honor, Dr. V.G. Somani, Dr. Jay Prakash, and Dr. Anurag Agarwal, had very informative keynote speeches. In the afternoon, we had a session on healthcare and biopharma sector, which shed more light into the COVID pandemic and its challenges. Today's morning session will be on medical devices and software sector and will feature eminent speakers who will enrich our knowledge to a great extent. Our first speaker for the session is Dr. Vibhav Garg, who will be speaking on is COVID-19, the strategy for Atmanirbhar Bharat for medtech sector. Dr. Vibhav Garg is the Director of Health Economics and Government Affairs for the Indian and Asian Hub at Boston Scientific. Through his illustrious career in the healthcare and life sciences industry spanning over a decade, he has made an enormous and indelible mark through the various responsibilities he has fulfilled. He has been honored with many positions, including the chairperson of the Indian COE of the Asia Pacific Medical Technology Association. His experience in business administration and his expertise in a wide array of fields such as research, consulting, strategy, planning, policy research and advocacy, advisory science services, in and out licensing, pre sale, and business development has been pivotal for the various positions he has held. He has had a reformatory role and, most notably, made powerful strides in advancing policy and technology utilization. His acute understanding of administration has allowed him to define solution frameworks in many complex projects. I would like to request Sir to please take stage.
Hi, Aritra, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
All right, thank you, Aritra, for that generous introduction. And just a quick correction: I'm still not a doctor. Still pursuing my PhD, and hopefully by end of the year I might be a doctor if all goes well. So thank you for those words. And I also take this opportunity to thank CIIE and BITS Pilani to giving me this opportunity to again reconnect with my alma mater. I passed out ME Biotechnology in June 2001 from BITS Pilani. These are like sweet memories for me to connect back with all of you in the campus. And you know the clock gave me a lot of memories back of the 1 year that I spent on campus. So thank you for that opportunity. Um, I also, wanted to take this time to reflect upon particularly the CIIE. I think the three words that this center has: the innovation, the incubation, and the entrepreneurship. I think that these three things are the key in today's world. To become a successful venture or to initiate as a growth oriented venture and then to become successful in your respective fields. So I think I can only say BITS Pilani kind of doing that merging of these three keywords, creating this center. Because the medical devices. Let me come to medical devices. It is such a multidisciplinary field that you need a doctor, you need an engineer, you need a mathematician, you need a chemist, you need a pharmacist, you need a biotechnologist or a biologist, you need a chemical engineer, and so on and so forth. So you need all these people to come together when you are trying to innovate a medical device, trying to create a medical device which is of use for patient in any part of the world. And while being on campus with BITS Pilani, I think I could see that um, the culture of multidisciplinary teams out there while being there, where a mechanical engineer can learn chemistry, where a electrical engineer can learn economics, and so on and so forth. So I think if we have more of BITS Pilanis in the country which are promoting multidisciplinary um, education, I think medical device field will certainly grow more beyond what it is growing. So with that, let me come to the topic today that I wanted to discuss, with all of you, which is COVID-19 the strategy for Atmanirbhar Bharat for medical devices. So if we see the title, it has two or three or four keywords, right? So one keyword is COVID-19, which has been the keyword for the whole webinar. The other one is the strategy. The third one is the Atmanirbhar or the self-reliant India. And finally, it is medical device. Now, when we talk about, let's talk about self-reliant India or Atmanirbhar Bharat. What does it really mean, and how will it supposed to be panning out when we talk about the self-reliance? So I think self-reliance, we always think self-reliance is that when we have everything with us, right? When we have access to everything with us, that becomes the self-reliance. The availability, the accessibility of whatever we need is available with us, is there for us. I think that's where we say that we are self-reliant now. And therefore, when we say self-reliance for medical device, we talk about that whatever medical devices are required, for patients in India, for general masses in India, we have all those medical devices with us, available and accessible. And I think that's where the self-reliance will come into picture. However, when we say is available for us, what does it mean? Does it mean that we start manufacturing everything in India? Does it mean that we should have import of everything to India? Or does it mean the hybrid strategy where we say, okay, we have the capabilities of manufacturing medical devices in these categories, and to complement that, we are importing few medical devices in these categories, and then over a period of time we see how do we really create that ecosystem, that manufacturing ecosystem, that medical device ecosystem in the country, so that slowly but steadily we are starting manufacturing medical devices which are not manufactured in India today. And let me give you a few examples. So medical devices, when we talk about, it starts from a simple medical device. And let me give you an example if you're not aware, that even a small thermometer is a medical device, right? The tongue depressor, right? The doctor uses whenever you go to a physician, they use a depressor, the wooden depressor to push your tongue down to see if what's there on the tongue in terms of because that talks about a lot about your stomach condition. So that tongue depressor, it's also a medical device. That's on the simple side of it, and we call them low risk medical device or lowest risk medical device. Then slowly you go to the highest risk medical devices, which are like your pacemakers that you use for your heart, MRI, CT scan, and so on and so forth. So, you range the medical devices from low risk, low complexity to high risk, high complexity medical devices. And today in India, a lot of low risk, low complexity medical devices are getting manufactured, which include, as I said, thermometers, the supporting belts, the syringes, the catheters, and the cannulas, and so on and so forth. So I think it is important for us to understand that the self-reliance when we talk about, we are talking about the capabilities that we have and we intend to develop in creating that ecosystem in the country, which will help manufacture those medical devices. And another thing which is also important to connect with self-reliance is also in medical devices. And let me give you, especially for the benefit of pharmaceutical graduates on the call, and biosciences graduate on the call, and also the management graduates and the innovation center graduates, is the medical device field is little different from pharmaceuticals in a way that when you have pharmaceutical innovate, you have innovated a molecule, right? And you have taken a patent of it. Now that patent, remains valid for 10 to 15 years, and then you keep changing some part of the molecule, and you again, sort of apply for the patent. That's called, the evergreening of the patent, and one molecule remains valid for longer period of time. In it is just opposite in medical devices, where you have design patents, but then medical device is a very short cycle of innovation, wherein there are innovation every 2 to 3 years. So if I work for a company um, which manufactures cardiac stents, now we bring the incremental innovation in every 2 to 3 years, which sort of impacts the health outcome, the clinical outcome for the patients. And therefore, if you see the two things, that if you have created a new molecule in pharmaceutical, you are good in market for 10, 15 years. But if you are into medical device business, I think that's where you have to be innovation oriented, and you cannot avoid, or you cannot afford to play with the same medical devices for a longer period of time, because your competition is innovating continuously and bringing newer medical devices. And therefore, I think from manufacturing, the R&D or the innovation becomes a very important precursor for medical devices. And therefore, it is important for us as a country to also promote innovations in medical devices in country, to be able to create that ecosystem for manufacturing of medical devices in the country. So that I talked about the self-reliant or Atmanirbharta or self-reliance in medical devices. Now let's talk about two more words before that we were there. So that is, I talked about the COVID-19 is the strategy. Now let me give you some few examples here, right? Now before COVID struck us early this year, all the companies, all the corporates, even academics, even the research institution had some strategy, right? There's a research strategy. What do we need to do? If we are talking about corporate particularly, what device are we working on, what drug we are working on, and so on and so forth. um, there is a strategy on the digital strategy of all the organization, that okay, we need to digitalize our resources available. We have to digitize the data which is available. We have to also get onto the digital platform to be able to connect the multiple departments that we have. How do we digitize our activity so that the information is centrally available, and so on and so forth, right? So everybody had some thoughts around it. The moment COVID struck us, I think everything changed for us, right? So the what changed for us is the way we connect. And you can see this, maybe this webinar would have been an in-person webinar in the campus of BITS Pilani, but now we are virtually connecting. That changed completely the world. And it is not just in India, I think across the globe, we have seen the adoption of digital technologies has been much, much faster than it has been in maybe last decade or so. What also changed is, our strategies for the collaboration. While it was seen, and I can give you examples from my company as well. So the senior management used to think that the global board meetings cannot really happen on virtual medium. They have to fly from, say, India to US. Somebody is coming from Brazil to US. Somebody is coming from Australia to US, and so on and so forth. And now they've realized that they have spent 5 hours on a board meeting just like we are interacting. So the way we collaborate has changed completely, or has evolved completely, I would say. In a similar fashion, if you see the manufacturing capabilities, and medical device manufacturing any which ways is not a very labor intensive, because they are highly automated plants that are available. But still, I think the research and development activities, the value chain that we talk about, a lot of these things have been accelerated because of COVID, and the digital strategies have been adopted. So therefore, I think a lot of these strategies that we had, that we have in place, but those got accelerated because of COVID when it struck. And you know what? Whenever I talk to the CEO of a medical device company, it is always like, okay, so have you adopted? Yes. What made it? COVID-19. Have you started innovating now on newer devices? Yes. What made it? COVID-19. So on a lighter note, we always say that COVID-19 has been a IT strategist, the digital adoption strategist, the innovation strategist, and so on and so forth, for a lot of these companies, for a lot of these sectors. So now with the help that I've tried to define the four keywords in the title of the discussion that I intended to have, I think it is also important now to understand that how COVID-19 and strategy, will make us self-reliant in medical devices. Now, you must have heard Honorable Prime Minister on many occasions that when COVID-19 struck us in the beginning, we were actually importing a lot of the devices which were used in containment of COVID, whether it is N95 masks, whether it is ventilators, whether it is PPE kits, and so on and so forth. But now, over a period of 3 to 6 months, what has happened is we have now become such able in and first of all initiating and then stepping up the manufacturing capabilities of not only these three devices but many other devices which are used in COVID containment, that we are now exporting these devices to other countries. Now, how did it happen, or how it could happen um, because of COVID? So, were we not aware we could do it? We were aware. I think what has happened is that COVID-19 pushed us, to the core where we started thinking out of the box. And when we say out of the box, I'm not sure if you are aware, but a lot of automobile companies came into the picture. And you must have read in the newspaper that, because the sale of automobile, particularly the four-wheeler and also two-wheelers, got substantially down during COVID period, the first 5 to 6 months. Therefore, their assembly line were lying idle. A lot of these, companies, whether it is Mahindra and Mahindra or Maruti and so on and so forth, they came on board in manufacturing actually the ventilators for the country. So those manufacturing lines were used, manufacturing ventilators. A lot of other companies came on board who were manufacturing similar devices to start manufacturing. So what COVID-19 did us, it showed us the true nature of multidisciplinary collaboration, where these companies came on board, which never would have thought in their life that they will get into medical device manufacturing, right? But it happened. And it happened in a way that now we are manufacturing hundreds of thousands of these medical devices and we are exporting them. Another area which has happened is, which government now realized, is that that while COVID-19 told us that when we are pushed hard, we start thinking big, and why not? I mean, we all know that across the globe, the best minds available are all Indian minds, whether these are doctors, engineers, management gurus, and so on and so forth. So we had that with us, and we were pushed. We actually created that ecosystem, and then government took advantage of that, and they came out with multiple policies to attract manufacturing in medical devices. And few of these policies I wanted to share with you. One of them is called PLI, which is called production linked incentive. The government said, come manufacture, and when you sell those devices, whether you export them, whether you sell in the domestic market, we will give you confirmed incentive of certain percentage on the sale volume when you start manufacturing. So it's called production linked incentive. And so that policy has been out already. It also has the investment which will be done in R&D as a part of this particular scheme. The second scheme they came out with is PMP, which is phased manufacturing plan, right? So in this, they say, okay, you plan your manufacturing, and there will be a certain subsidy given to those companies who bring in the capital investments to the country in a phased manner, right? So that's the second scheme, which are very, very attractive scheme. And third, but not the last one, the PPO, which is called public procurement order. So there have been a lot of requests from Indian manufacturers that when we come to India for manufacturing, can we have something which is more preferable for procurement by government institutions from Indian manufacturers? So government came out with this public procurement order where they say that if a device, obviously it is for larger industry because it is applicable across the industry. But I'm taking an example of medical device. So any medical device which is manufactured in India, and there is a government procurement, the preference will be given for a device which is available in India, which is manufactured in India, and then to other people who are participating. So these three policies, which are very much linked, came out in the COVID period. I mean, PMP was available before, But PPO came out, the revised PPO came out in this period, the PLI came out in this period. So even government was of the opinion that we have to have certain supporting policies for medical devices manufacturing to be able to make the medical device industry or making India self-sufficient for medical devices. Now let's go a little step further and let's talk about regulations in medical devices, which is very, very important because it's a very, very complex sector. So we already have medical device rules which work under Drug and Cosmetic Act already available. And now even the definition of medical devices has been added to the act, helping the whole industry define a medical device. And medical device rules which are available are very, very helpful in getting those approvals for manufacturing, approvals for medical devices in a very short span of time. And then even if you have to do post-marketing surveillance or clinical trials for medical devices, all these things are well defined in that. And I think so that's where regulations are more or less settled in the country when we talk about medical devices. However, now I see that we are getting towards the end of the talk and I wanted to have some time for discussion. So last point from my side is, medical devices, the COVID-19, particularly for healthcare sector, has got some very, very important learning for all of us in the sector. And the first of that learning is that we as a country have to start spending much more, as a percentage of GDP on healthcare. Now, government is spending around 1.2 to 1.3% of GDP on healthcare, and the private sector is spending around 4% of GDP on healthcare. So around 5% we, as a country, we spend on healthcare, and therefore this spend, particularly from the government side, need to go up and higher substantially, at least if not more than double. So maybe towards almost 2.5% of GDP we need to spend on healthcare, because we have seen the gaps that we have in public health. During the COVID time, we could see that hospitals were not prepared. Therefore, the lockdown in the beginning for 2.5 months, helped all of us prepare our public health center, the private health centers, and therefore this spend on healthcare is very, very important to go up from its current stage. That second learning that we had, all of us had, is that I think we as a country need much better penetration of medical devices, than we have today. Today, just about 6 to 7% is the penetration of medical devices in the country. And I say so because the healthcare industry in our country is around $120 billion and medical devices around $7 to $8 billion. So that talks about around 7 to 8% of the penetration in the country for medical devices. Therefore, the higher penetration is needed so the accessibility and the availability can be enhanced for the masses in India, for the patients in India. And last but not the least, another learning which came out is that whether it's a pandemic or no pandemic, I think the patients need equal attention, because we saw suddenly that the care about COVID patient was so high and it was required because of the pandemic. But then somewhere we neglected the non-COVID patients, right? People were still suffering from heart attack. People were still suffering from, kidney diseases, the lung diseases, and so on and so forth. So somewhere that got on back burner. Patients were not coming to the hospital because they were afraid that if they go to hospital, they will catch the COVID and then they will be suffering with dual disease burden. But then it is important to take care of not just the COVID patient, but also the non-COVID patients at the same time, so that we are not neglecting those patients who need a different kind of care at the same time when we are struggling and addressing a pandemic. So those were few learnings from COVID-19. And when we come to the theme of the webinar, when we say challenges, so I shared the challenges with you, but opportunities. I think opportunities for India in medical devices are really, really big. Two reasons. One, as I said, the penetration is really low. So you see more penetration bringing more demand in the country, and therefore, more companies, more startups can really look into how do they want to venture into medical devices to meet that demand. And I think second is government support, the policy which are supporting. You have Department of Biotechnology having that BIRAC, which is supporting medical device incubation. And these policies from Department of Pharmaceutical and different departments in Government of India who are supporting manufacturing and R&D of medical devices in the country. So therefore, all in all, I would say there is a tremendous opportunity for medical device startups, for medical device innovation companies, for medical device manufacturers to come to India, to start their base in India, to be able to reap the benefits available in India for medical devices. So I take a pause here, Aritra. That's pretty much it from my side, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions that would have triggered through my talk, if at all.
I request all participants to put their questions down in the chat box. I'll be reading out questions as and when they come.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in the meantime, that the questions are awaited from the participants. Another thought that I wanted to sort of share with especially the honorable dean and the director and the faculty of BITS Pilani on the group is that I think the kind of multidisciplinary culture that we are cultivating in BITS Pilani, I think it is the boon for medical device sector, to be fair and honest here. And I think it'll be very, very important that we bring more multidisciplinary, I think smaller groups under CIIE, because as the name suggests, it has innovation, incubation, entrepreneurship. So if we can promote that more, I think we can do wonders by the kind of brains we have in BITS Pilani. I think that'll be very, very useful. That's a request from an alumnus. And I'll be very happy to collaborate if need be. Thank you so much. Aritra, is there any question for me?
Yeah. So there's a question which states that India is cost competitive, but what steps can be taken for quality focus?
Great. Actually it's a fantastic question. I wanted to touch. I forgot to touch. Thanks for reminding me. I think particularly for medical devices or anything related to healthcare for that matter, quality is of paramount importance, and therefore there have been well-defined criterias in the regulations of medical devices, as I said, medical device rules, that ensures that the devices which are manufactured in the country or are coming to the country are of quality. There is a quality management system called ISO 13485, which is mandatory for any company who is either importing or manufacturing the device in the country to comply with. Similarly, they are very specific product related standard by Bureau of Indian Standard, which one has to comply with when they are manufacturing these medical devices. So therefore, there are well-defined criteria one has to follow. Now, obviously, as a startup, you will find it difficult that, okay, there are so many restrictions, but then it is also important to bring out a quality device because this is going inside the body of a patient. So we have to be very, very careful that we are not bringing substandard tool and do not compromise, and we are not compromising quality with the cost. Usually that's what happens, right? And quality comes with a price. So therefore, it is very, very important for anybody on the group on this call who is thinking to venture into medical device or who are already ventured into medical device to not compromise quality. Yes, do innovations, do frugal innovations, but make sure that that is not compromising the quality which are well defined in the country for a product. Thank you.
So just one more question. Two questions actually. The first question is, what will companies which are now focused on core medical devices for COVID, what will they work on post COVID?
Uh, so I think, when you say companies who are focusing on COVID, core COVID, now when you say core COVID, what are the devices which are needed for COVID? I talked about it. You talked about masks, you talked about PPE kits, you talked about ventilators, you talked about, some of the specific type of cannulas or syringes or something like that, drug-filled syringes. Now, all these things are actually required in a non-COVID world as well. So I don't see a reason why the companies focusing on core COVID devices will be out of business post-COVID. they will be very much in business, because all these devices are very much required, even in, as I said, non-COVID world, in healthcare as well as in non-healthcare. So PPE you just don't need in healthcare, right? PPE kits are required in many other areas where you need isolation from the environment, right? Similarly, masks are just not required in healthcare. They're required in many other manufacturing capabilities, setups which are not healthcare or non-healthcare. So I don't think that they will be out of business even post-COVID, for that matter.
The next question is, can we focus on developing device accessories in collaborations with any educational institution?
Why not? Absolutely. So there are many education institutions who are working on many of these pilots. Actually, you name, for example, Naipar Ahmedabad. They are developing a lot of pilots, and they come under Department of Pharma, Government of India. I think IIT Powai is working on many such things. IIT Chennai is working on many such things. Delhi as well. I'm sure BITS Pilani is working on many such pilots. So I think there is a absolute open collaboration. And then you can also collaborate with research centers under Government of India, right? So Ministry of Electronics has such centers which are working on different kind of electronic sensors to be used in MRI, CT scan, and they are now developing a lot of different kind of magnets used in this. So absolutely, and in fact, I would go one step further. Why you only think to collaborate with academics or research? You should collaborate with industry. Go to work with even established companies who have R&D in India. Go and talk about them. Go and talk to them what they are innovating. Can you become a extended arm of their R&D centers in India? So I think that collaboration will be very, very useful for, I think, CIIE, particularly if they are working on medical devices in BITS Pilani.
Uh, One more question is, if we want to conduct clinical trials on COVID patients, what are the permissions required in India?
So I won't be able to talk much about it. That's a subject much beyond that I can talk about. But I think for trials, if you are talking about it, so when you say trial, obviously it could be a drug trial or a device trial, or different kind of other trials as well. But if you are referring to drug trial and device trial, when both the conditions, you have to take permission from the Drug Controller General of India. So I think you have to put in right kind of applications to get those approval done, and then you can start your trials out there. And then ICMR also. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think that's all with questions. And thank you for that wonderful and insightful speech. I'll be moving on.
Thank you so much, Artra, for that opportunity. And I thanks once again for giving me this opportunity to reconnect with all of you at BITS Pilani. It really made me nostalgic. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Appreciate it.
I would request all of the participants to fill out the Google form, which will be shared on the chat box. It is compulsory for all participants. Now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Vijay Simha, who will be speaking on getting the best out of physiological sensors, the challenge of sensitivity and specificity in disease diagnosis, prognosis, and monitoring. Mr. Vijay Simha is a biophysicist and engineer with specialized training in semiconductor technology. He has spent over 30 years in product development, product engineering, manufacturing, and market entry strategy in areas such as high precision analytical instruments, tribology and measurement systems, semiconductor manufacturing, fermentation technology, bulk drugs manufacturing, factory automation and robotics, aerospace engineering, and medical technology. As an architect of over 21 products launched, his activities have been predominantly looking at sciences and translating them into usable products. And he has had business and manufacturing activities across the US, Germany, Japan, Russia, Singapore, and India. Mr. Simha is an active member of the FICCI Health Services Committee and the FICCI Advisory Council on Innovation, and has an active evangelist role for the development of a vibrant medical technology ecosystem for India. Currently, he is on the board as director and advisor for a number of technologically based companies and a few philanthropic social impact foundations, such as the Lemonson Foundation, Research and Innovation Circle, BIRAC DBT, and FICCI Startup Committee for Waste Impact, that are engaged in leveraging deep science inventions for enhancing the quality of life. Sir, I would like to welcome you on stage.
Hi, Thank you, guys. Um, I do appreciate you guys taking interest in the stuff that probably we do. It's been a long while since I've visited Pilani. I mean, there were two occasions. One was for the 25th Silver Jubilee, which I missed because um, I had to have an appendix removed, and just at that time. And then the second one was a 40th reunion, which I was at the airport, but because of the air show, my plane was cancelled, and there were no flights going out of Bangalore from that point onwards. Good morning to you folks. It's glad that I could catch up with you virtually. In fact, this is a great medium to be keeping in touch with. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the subject I thought I would probably talk about today is something about physiological sensors, because that's an area where it has been keeping me awake at night for over the last 10 years. And that was when I started really getting into medical devices. 10 years, 2007, 2017, no, 15 years almost now. Time flies. And I guess the challenges that I've seen in the medical devices industries has been, to a large extent, quite solvable with our engineering minds. And so therefore, I would like you guys to be able to, sort of put your engineering knowledge and, of course, your multidisciplinary background that Vibhav has been talking about in terms of the kind of education that we went through. I'm not sure now after 50 years what's the situation there, but we were grounded in everything, including the fine arts. So this was something that I guess stood by me while during my journey as an inventor, innovator. I've been through multiple industries, as Jay had mentioned, and the fact is that the multidisciplinary background actually helped me to, sort of understand and cut the learning curve down quite considerably. So without further much ado and blah, blah, blah about myself, I would like to start with my screen share, which is, how do I do that? Right. My screen's visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So, yeah, that's my ID. If I remembered it correctly, no, it is correct. That's when I passed out. That was my final ID. Biosciences 774, serial number. So I use this title, Be Aware of the Power of Physiological Sensors in a Crowd, much from a t-shirt that I saw, that be aware of the power of stupid people in crowds. What happens is the crowd is the keyword here. And I would like to touch upon my basic premise and, sort of thesis of how these sensors, when they work in a crowd, can provide much better specificity and sensitivity, or accuracy and precision, as it may go, with higher cognitive power for machines, such as the AI-driven machines, which require, which are totally deficient of cognitive inputs at the moment. To quickly start, I would take the case of SARS-CoV-2, which is so much there in our minds today. And the diagnostic processes is kind of like very simple, which goes from, a temperature measurement for asymptomatic people to see if they recognize that they have elevated temperatures or not, or symptomatic people who have all the symptoms that are described for COVID. And the next stage of the test is to go in for a chest X-ray or for a CT, which gives you the very specific ground glass kind of opacity appearance on the CT image, and this is indicative of a COVID-like or a ARDS-like infection of the lungs. In between, of course, there is the rapid antigen test, which is based on the fact that you have a small device that can actually, like a lateral flow assay device, I'm sure you're familiar with many of that stuff, which is like a pregnancy test, which tells you with a pinprick drop of blood, tells you positive, negative, right? And then, of course, the confirmatory test to say that, okay, I'm 100% sure, is finally the RT-PCR, which is being currently used for, the diagnosis of patients who have viral load in their system, in their body system. Just to mention how all these things kind of roll out to be able to give you a confirmatory test, is that each of these tests are vague in some way or the other. When I say vague, they lack precision and accuracy in being able to say, yes, this is a case of COVID-19. And why is that? It's probably because they are physiological signals that are not very specific to a particular disease, but could be indications of multiple disease variants. Like, for example, temperature. You could get it any which way through an infection, or maybe even a growing cancer in you, or a metabolic situation, which is a dysfunctioning autonomic nervous system. In the case of the symptoms like continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, there are multiple, confounding diseases that could contribute to these symptoms. So therefore, the challenge here is how do we take these physiological signals to be very specific? And when I say specific, we talk about specificity in terms of 98 to 99%. Is that possible? Well, if you ask the doctors, they say there is no such thing possible at all. The human body is too complex for us engineers. Well, if anything is below 99% accuracy, I don't think it's something that, is worth considering. So therefore, the concept between what is the accuracy and what is the precision that can be achieved is very much different in the biomedical sciences. Besides that, of course, SARS-CoV-2 has brought out another issue, and that is basically post-infection. There are complications which are confounding us quite considerably and quite understandably, in the sense that a disease is never an acute episode with a short period of time. It always leaves its footprint in your physiology for time to come. And if many cardiac diseases, if not treated in time or not managed properly in time, could turn out to be what we call as an acute phenomenon converting itself into a chronic phenomenon. A chronic means it's a lifelong disability that will be a part of your physiology. So therefore, you need management for the rest of your life. Now, these complications are caused by two factors here, and mainly because of the fact that we are fighting COVID and shooting bullets in the dark, and therefore sometimes we tend to cause damage, which we say is a risk that is worth taking against some unknown enemy infection. So the infection itself causes some of these dysfunctions, which you can see on the screen, and I would say to a large extent, one of the more prominent ones is the thromboembolic, outcomes, and CVD and heart failure, which is becoming quite prominent. In today's morning paper, a 23-year-old woman who had just delivered a baby but was COVID positive was brought into a hospital with myocarditis. So, and I think many of the cardiac centers are reporting a high degree of ACS, that is coronary syndrome, that is a blockage of the arteries in the heart, as a result of thromboembolism. And this is probably because of the fact that endothelial dysfunction is one of the causative factors for the clot formations. Apart from that, of course, the treatment itself is causing its side effects, which have long-standing sort of effect on the body. HCQ, AFib, pretty well known. Aggressive steroids and thrombolytics use, renal intolerance of some of the antivirals and antibiotics. These are some of the phase complications that are coming in. So basically here what we are trying to say is that a visit to a doctor and a lab test for one shot is not going to be enough to ensure that you're going to live happily ever after. There is a need for being able to provide a surveillance or a monitoring system over a period of time to see that you are keeping well. And the concept was basically in wearables like the watches and stuff like that. You had watches which could detect your ECG and then monitor it from time to time, and it will warn you in case things changed, and then you could take the appropriate action. So we have this concept of predictive, prognostic, or diagnostic, which means predictive, you could predict an event that is happening or likelihood of an event that would happen. Prognostic is something that will tell you about whether this set of parameters, symptoms that you are undergoing is going to lead to a successful outcome or going to lead to a more, I would say, when you say outcome, the worst outcome is probably mortality, or death. So that's something that a lot of people are interested in while doing management of a disease to ensure that your prognosis is that the outcome should be beneficial. And then, of course, diagnosis, which is very clear understanding of what the problem is. Yeah, so it's diagnosis, and the problems in clinical sciences is that our own natural sensors have certain limitations in terms of the bandwidth it can be able to absorb. Like we can see light only in the visible region, we can hear sounds between 20 to 20 kilohertz. So it kind of limits ourselves to that particular thing, but that's been pretty good in the sense that most of the diagnostic processes in the past have been using our ears, eyes, and maybe to a certain extent smell. But the fact is that today we have sensors that can replicate this in a much wider bandwidth of examination. And so therefore we have to train our brains to be able to understand what that means to us. Just to mention here that since the physiological phenomenon is a multivariate phenomenon, one influencing the other, it's almost like a problem for chaos theory to solve. It's sometimes beyond the capability of the human brain to be able to understand how all these kind of parts of a jigsaw puzzle kind of fit together. And so therefore we have started taking the help of artificially intelligent systems to be able to do these complex pattern recognition and putting together this jigsaw puzzle so that we will be able to make a quick clinical decision out of it. So there is that element of AI as an assistive technology taking over. Of course, the AI probably may not be able to put all the jigsaw puzzles together because it lacks cognitive ability. Idiopathic diseases is another area which is rampant in the clinical sciences. I mean, almost one in, or maybe 4 or 5 in spite of the fact that you have 22,000 disease categories, one in every, I would say 20 or 30 cases is idiopathic. And these are generally areas where clinical sciences has not been able to provide a lot of learning or knowledge in its functioning. And I can understand one of the reasons why. It's because of the complexity of the multivariate system and the kind of mathematical rigor one has to be able to, sort of process to be able to, arrive at a clinical decision or a diagnosis for that matter. I would say to a large extent, this is an area where most of us would love to, sort of be able to contribute in terms of trying to find a diagnostic process. And then we need to differentiate between sick care versus health care. Healthcare is a lot about leading a good, healthy life. The lifestyle, the preventive measures that we take, what we are doing in the lockdown is we are trying to ensure that we don't unnecessarily expose ourselves to certain risks, conditions. And of course, in sick care, the physician's role is not only to alleviate the symptoms. I think it's all about managing the disease for longitudinal outcome, which means for long-term outcomes. So this is the continuum of care. Most of you are familiar with this. So when I come to physiological signals, I'm talking about different types of signals that we can read on it. One is the intrinsic signals, like, for example, the ECG or body temperature, or the sounds that emanate from our body, like the heart sounds, the stomach sounds, and the lung sounds. Apart from that, of course, we try to see a response kind of a technology, which is what we call interrogative. We either send ultrasound signals inside or X-rays inside, and whatever bounces out, we try to analyze them. We can extend it to things like mechanical energy, things like elasticity of liver or tumor tissue, or the lungs, or, in the case of even the heart, the left ventricular hypertrophy can be, assessed using a mechanical signal. So there are a number of such things there, and it brings me to one particular reason why we've been looking at all these interrogatory signals is that possibly some of them, like X-rays, am I audible? Okay, cool. So moving on to these types of measurements, as I mentioned earlier, that there are situations where we need to take a quick stat, as we would call it, measurement beside the bedside, or maybe in a patient who's in your consulting room, just to understand. Like for a blood pressure measurement, it's a stat measurement. And then, of course, there are dynamic measurements where you would like to see the trends to see whether the disease is improving or the disease is getting worse. And this is super useful in places where you undergo a treatment, and each individual patient, of course, responds differently to the treatment. And so therefore, you'd like to see whether the treatment is appropriate and you're responding it to very well. The trends also give you an idea of the prognostic value of a particular treatment or a management process, and so therefore you have these two types of signals, which are, one is very quick, short, one is long term, and generally, I mean, the ones which are long term would be kind of variable in some way or the other. So if you're looking at heart function, for example, do you think I can strap an echocardiograph to my chest and walk around? Well, that's a question that we'll answer later. So this is the problem with, I intentionally made this slide to look so unreadable. And that's what happens to many physiological signals. It's cluttered with noise. It's cluttered with a lot of other things which look like noise, but could be signals from other parts of other organs or other physiological processes. And so therefore, in general, biosignals, if you have to map it onto a specific indication or a disease, its sensitivity is very poor because of all this clutter around. The second part of it is that it changes very rapidly, like what we call as the white coat phenomenon. When a doctor with a white coat or a nurse with a white coat walks in with a BP apparatus, your BP shoots up. And that is not very natural, but it is also natural that your BP shoots up whenever you have an anxiety moment or whatever it is. So it doesn't mean that you're sick just because your BP shot up. And then, of course, there is a lot of other things that are there in the forms of biomarkers, which are there in your serum or blood, which is like hundreds of thousands of molecules. And you're looking for one molecule, and that molecule may not necessarily be a dominant molecule in your serum. And so therefore, looking for that molecule is going to be a major challenge in sensitivity. There are many other areas which are used in diagnosis which are symptomatic based and are very subjective. Like, for example, pain. I've got pain in my stomach. Where? How? Is it a sharp pain? Is it a dull pain? Now, the patient is going to have a lot of difficulty in communicating what kind of pain it is. Can we have some measurement processes that can actually look at those pain factors? Well, that's a question that you guys can answer over a period of time. So as an example of a physiological system that I've spent about, sensor system that I spent about almost 6 years, is in the heart function area. And the reason why I took this up is because you must be familiar with the fact that 20% of the patients who present themselves with obvious symptoms of AMI, chest pain, edema, maybe shortness of breath, and those symptoms in the ER rooms in the hospital, the first line of being able to determine whether it is an AMI or whether it is a gastric problem or it could be some other related infectious disease related area is to be able to do a 12-lead ECG and a troponin T test or troponin I test, right? In 20% of the cases, both these turn out to be negative because in ECG they're looking for STEMI, whereas a large number of cases do present themselves with non-STEMI kind of situations. So that's negative. And troponin is a very late stage presentation of a biomolecule marker in the AMI staging. So it could be negative. And there have been many cases where people were given antacids or given a proton pump inhibitor and sent home where they collapse in the parking lot of the hospital with a full-blown heart attack. This has happened so many times, not only in India, but across the world. And so therefore, it sort of needed some thinking. And if you look at the heart, it's a complex system. And like we all engineers will understand, I know, life sciences guys will say this engineer is just, sort of making everything look like an engineering thing. But the fact is that it's got electrical parts, it's got mechanical parts, it's got a functional part, which is the hemodynamic condition, the status. And I've put them into slightly different colors because if you look at what are the machines used for this, or what are the tools used for this, you have an ECG which looks at the electrical part, and then you have an echocardiography system which looks at the mechanical part. And they are separate machines. They are in two separate rooms, and they're sequential. They're not, you do one and then you go for the next one if in case one doesn't work. So this sort of set us thinking that why can't you obtain the total heart function as a single test? as a single method by which you can do it. And, um, I came across this particular thingy, which is basically, if you look at the graph below, it is the total heart function, which is the role of the heart is to pump blood, right? So if water is not being pumped from your pump, it could either be a valve failure or it could be electric motor failure. We are not, the ECG will tell you about the motor failure. Probably the echo will tell you about the valve failure. But here is something that we used the physiological signals that are coming out of the body, which is basically the heart sound. We call a subject called phonocardiography, and the ECG, which is the electrical signals coming out of the heart. So we've combined these two signals in what we call as orthogonal signals in some way, and use these two signals simultaneously to pick out various states that the heart undergoes and report its physical characteristics, say as biomarkers. So we call them biophysical markers. And it's a very simple device. We use a 3-axis accelerometer, which can pick up those various kinds of the phonocardiographic signals, not a microphone, but an accelerometer. And the reason is that accelerometers can be more focused and vectorized, and a single lead ECG to be able to tell us the various stages that, or the phases that the heart undergoes during one single heart cycle, as you can see here, from the isovolumetric contraction to the diastolic phase of pumping blood back into the left ventricle. So it started off with a number of sensors which we had put across the chest and all those things, and we found that this was absolutely not necessary. I could do the same thing and reduce the number of signals to a single lead and into a simple device that is a single lead ECG with an with a 3-axis accelerometer. And that became a wearable which people have been using around the world now. In fact, in some of the devices which you would probably use in cardioverting patients with an external defibrillator, they call it the life vest, incorporates this technology inside it, because what happens is that in an ambulatory patient, sometimes you will get noise, which is interpreted by the life vest as a ventricular fibrillation, and then it would deliver a shock, an unnecessary shock. So this would correlate with the sounds that it picks up and says, okay, this is noise, this is not ventricular fibrillation. So you're slowly getting to understand what is the concept of having orthogonal signals to be able to cross-check on one another to see if you are telling the right, if there is no fake news, if you can call it that way. And then the 4th generation cluster sensors, which has more physiological signals coming in, is going to give biomarkers which are far more awesome. Right, so here, just to give you an idea, these are the biomarkers that we worked on, the S4, S3, which are the classical ones that one listens to in auscultation, but never finds. And it's so easy for us to pick up these sounds and quantify them also. The EMAT is very, very novel in the sense that it's a concept that combines both ECG and heart sound. So from the Q wave initiation to the sound that comes out with the mitral valve closing, that is the time we measure in EMAT, and it is indicative for a hell of a lot of disease structures. We have got over 55 papers published in international journals on what is the utility of this EMAT, from bedside screening to outcome measurements in long term. This is a combination of various types of signals. So in this current device, the report printed out like this kind of gives you a very comprehensive indication of what is going on with your heart. And of course, this is a very sick patient, so therefore he has got a lot of findings, which include AV blocks, LV systolic dysfunction, prolonged EMAT, prolonged QR intervals. I think even, no, the QTC is normal. And then, of course, he has elevated, and he has an ejection fraction of only 35%, which means that this patient probably will not be able to manage without proper intervention. And yeah, he will be short, he will be having constant shortness of breath because he doesn't have blood pumping around. And of course, he will have edema all over the place, including medullary edema and pulmonary edema. So in summary, the new physiological sensors are now being clustered together to improve sensitivity and specificity. And the reason why I'm talking about we cluster them is because these sensors work as a community, try to keep a check amongst themselves to ensure that both the signal processing, the fake news component, the noise component can be minimized, and we can obtain a much more highly specific and sensitive set of data signals that we can base our clinical decisions on. And that's the concept that I would like to communicate to our young guys. Don't get stuck upon just saying, I want to make an ECG just because it's one kind of signal. No, make a device that can talk about heart failure or that can diagnose heart failure reliably, right? Make a device that can diagnose COVID-19 reliably in one shot, right? So this is the message that I would like to give to all the budding product developers and inventors at BITS Pilani, that look at these smart sensors as clusters and understand how they can actually improve your value delivery to the patient, to the medical community. And I think that's my last slide. Thank you. Any questions? Happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. I request participants to put their questions on the chat.
I don't see any. Well, I mean, I would just like to say that this whole developmental area is of great interest to a number of medical device developers across the country, and we have teams working across different incubators and places like that, where they would discover a new indication and have problems in being able to develop kind of degree of specificity on that, or even for that matter, sensitivity. Right today, the COVID rapid tests lack sensitivity. That's one of the things that is the issue. So I guess questions can come anytime. So no problem. I did mention my email ID at the beginning of the presentation, did I? No, I didn't. That's sad. Yeah, I can post my email ID if in case you have any questions subsequently. Right, guys?
I think we'll wait a little more for questions.
Sure. It's a Sunday, man. So no problem. Nice and easy.
So we have a question from a participant. Is periodic ECG report required for MVPS?
MVPS?
Yes, so is periodic ECG report required for MVPS?
Yeah, what is MVPS? Can you?
This is a request to Dr. Ramya to please clarify on that question in chat so that sir can read it.
Meanwhile, I'll just move on to the next question.
Yeah.
The next question is that accelerometer signals can be affected by the patient movement too. So how do you
Yeah.
classify it from heart activity and movement signals?
Oh, very simple. As such, the accelerometer signals, because it's a 3-axis accelerometer, you can actually vectorize it from which direction it's coming in. And it's a digital signal, so you can even put filters out there to remove movement artifacts very easily, right? The only place where I found a lot of difficulty in using accelerometers is in high G environments. That is, like, for example, if you're in a fighter aircraft that's traveling at 2G or 4G, not the telephone Gs, the gravitational force G, right? If you're traveling on that, then my accelerometer does not function, right, in those environments. So it loses its ability to do a measurement. But otherwise, this accelerometer can be tuned, can be directionalized to be able to understand whether the sound is coming from the stomach, or if you're shaking or moving or talking for that matter. In fact, talking signals are also picked up because they spread 360 degrees throughout your whole body. But the thing is that we have filters in place to be able to, sort of remove them. We do what we call as a wavelet analysis to be able to discriminate that. Plus, in addition to that, all sound signals, we are, doing a lot of fractal decomposition to be able to find out in that clutter of signals individual impact. Like, for example, the S4 heart sounds, the nature of S4 heart sounds itself is indicative of what is the staging of a particular left ventricular hypertrophic situation or an atrial situation that is related to it. So, those sort of things are possible. So that is a signal processing, I would say, method.
So the next question is, what could be the significance of monitoring non-specific health makers like
Health
immunogenicity
markers.
biomarkers? Yeah, I think markers,
Yeah, health markers.
like
Health markers
inflammatory
like,
biomarkers, and can it
yeah,
be an indication of overall well-being?
yes. Um, there is a lot of work that's happening on what we call as heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is a response from the autonomic nervous system as such. The parasympathetic and sympathetic response is again cluttered with a lot of activities, hormonal as well as neurogenic activities within the body. So, our autonomic system has a lot of sensors across the body which finds out things what are happening at various places, relays this message back to the brain, and the brain says, okay, let's send in the military to fight the enemy, which is basically the immune system. In many cases, I've seen that we have been able to electrically stimulate the autonomic system, or even the systems that are related or can be related to the autonomic system, to be able to, set off functions and close certain functions. There is a long paper. Of course, it's a subject to a lot of discussions, but we have recently got an FDA approval for one of our devices which uses auricular stimulation by a method called PENS, percutaneous electrical neural stimulation, and that has actually been quite effective in pain management at the moment, which is to a large extent, an autonomic response. And this device has shown, or this method, method has shown that it has some other interesting benefits. In fact, we've seen that it's in some cases we can actually switch on and switch off hormonal activity from the endocrine glands. So I know many of you doctors in the group are going to say like, what is this? This is witchcraft. Well, I think we're moving closely to witchcraft situations right now. In fact, the autonomic nervous system is one of the least understood subjects in medical sciences, in clinical sciences. So we'll be dealing with almost like witchcraft in that area. But evidence will come in, surely.
We have two questions. First question is, sir, did you gather any insight on determining failure of heart valves and utilizing it to design better artificial valves?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the heart valve issue has been going on for quite some time, using, apart from the fact that they have been using heart valves from animal sources, it could be also heart valves like steel or titanium and stuff like that that's being used. And each of them have advantages, have disadvantages, and depends on where you're using them. But the biggest challenge, of course, is in the management of heart valve replacement, which is in most cases you're on thrombolytics for the rest of your life, and thrombolytics is those anti-clotting drugs, and these anti-clotting drugs are like a double-edged sword. If in case you get a small cut, you may bleed excessively, unnecessarily, and that could be a threat. So there are many new things there, but I've spent some time working on some synthetic materials that could actually replace some of these heart valves, but I'm not yet there, right? But in the meantime, of course, heart muscle, the left ventricular systolic dysfunction, which is the death of your heart muscles, and your heart muscles are not able to pump or have the strength to pump blood anymore, in spite of the fact that you have a very robust ECG system, but your heart valves are not supporting it. So we call it, systolic dysfunction, which could be either it's too stiff or it's become too loose. And if that is the case, then we have a different method right now, which we are developing, which is basically instead of, and the method is to look at a left ventricular pump there. So this pump is put in the place of your left ventricle and pumps the blood, and it's synchronized with your heart cycle. But we are trying to look at the diaphragm, where we can use the diaphragm and stimulate the diaphragm, which is another muscular organ which is close to the heart and can support the left ventricle in its pumping cycle. And we synchronize the diaphragm's contraction with that of the cardiac cycle. So stuff like that is happening. And you guys can work on it. Make a nice silicone muscle equivalent, which will respond to maybe 20 millivolts of electricity and contract substantially. You got it there, The next question is, I hope that gives you some insight into that. Design better valves. Yeah, sure, please go ahead. Design, How can we make devices or a platform for continuous remote monitoring, especially for remote cancer patient monitoring, where the vitals doesn't necessarily change drastically day-to-day basis, making it difficult to classify the risk score of the cancer patient? Okay, so there are two issues about cancer patients. One is the chemotherapeutic process, which is used in the treatment of cancer patients. And the other, of course, is whether the patient is responding to the therapy or not, because we have lots of drugs that are happening right now, and many of them are extremely toxic. Cancer therapeutics, both monoclonals as well as the anthracyclines, have known to cause heart failure. And that's what happens in my line of study, is that I have a large number of patients who are undergoing, for breast cancer, they're undergoing anthracycline treatment, and they develop heart failure. So the process of, how these these cardiotoxic drugs begin to remodel the cardiac tissue is something that is being studied, and how it can be prevented to a large extent is to be understood. But the thing is that you have to take the patient off the chemotherapeutic agent, otherwise they will die of heart failure and not cancer. So, whichever way. I'm not sure about the remote monitoring of cancer patients, but there are molecular biomarkers which will probably would have to be taken from time to time to be able to report what it is, apart from the fact that there are some physiological signals which could be picked up, but I haven't delved very deep into that. So Shashank, you will have to excuse me at this moment, we could find cancer markers, but I won't be able to tell you at this moment. I know one thing, I have worked on that, and that is what we call as electrical impedance spectroscopy. I'm a biophysicist, right? So electroimpedance spectroscopy in diagnosing cervical cancer, and that too at a very early stage of cervical cancer. That product is already out, adopted in the UK big time, and it's a device called Z-scan, and it's a non-invasive, just touch and it'll tell you sin grade, low, that is a low intensity sin or a high grade sin. So that the physician can make a decision on whether they should do a surgery or observe and wait till the body's immune system takes over. So that is one way. One sensor I can tell you that worked very fine in our case, and it even performed better than biopsies in many cases. Are F1, F2 measures being used in tests as accuracy? Could be misleading sometimes. Can you qualify what is F1, F2? You are talking about data sciences? F1, F2? Which F1, F2 is this about? Is it about the data sciences part of F1, F2? Okay, so I know what F1, F2 is in data sciences as what it would be to the predictivity and the prognostic equivalence in clinical sciences. And the major factor here, of course, is you have the sensitivity, specificity, right? True positives, true negatives. These are the basic classifications for the cohort that you're doing statistical analysis of. I'm not a great fan of statistical analysis because it assumes that 80% of the population should represent 100% of the population. And that's not exactly, personalized medicine. It's more generalized medicine, and it's a population-based kind of a study. So, as we say, no two fingers are the same. I mean, no two patients are the same for us too, right? They may respond differently. I would say that the whole concept here is to be able to, sort of develop techniques and methods for randomized clinical trials to be able to obtain a slightly more complex interaction that moves from the plane of just pure complex to understanding multivariate interactions between various systems. This is the challenge for phytopharmaceuticals, or what you say, plant-based pharmaceuticals, or for that matter, alternative medicine. Alternative medicine has a challenge where there are many factors involved, and some of the factors are not direct indicators of a cure or an action or pharmacological action. And so therefore, a different paradigm needs to be worked out for people who work in this area of holistic medicine, where, maybe a lullaby cures a disease. I don't know. I mean, there would be claims like that coming up, right? In fact, I think there is a physician group in Hyderabad that talks about the classical music on wound healing and stuff like that. So it'll be difficult, I guess. Required for mitral valve prolapse syndrome, of course, yes. Dr. Ramya, it is required. I would say more than ECG. I would look for mitral valve prolapse more from the point of view of other heart sounds that could indicate a prolapse. Things like, for example, an S3 regurg and a mitral valve regurg, and of course some factors related to the insufficiency, lowered output, cardiac output, which could be lowered ejection fraction. So it's a heart failure situation.
With that, we come to the end of questions. Thank you, sir, for that really interesting session and really interactive session too.
All right. See you guys. Any questions? Let it come my way. I'll try to, answer them. Cheers then.
Moving on. Now, I would like to introduce the third speaker for this session, Mr. K.S. Babu. He'll be talking about pandemic and promising possibilities, a positive perspective. Mr. K.S. Babu is the head of regulatory affairs at Pfizer Healthcare India Private Limited and is based at Chennai. He has been associated with the organization for the last 9 years. Due to his strong passion for building world-class regulatory teams, he has been instrumental in expanding Pfizer's regulatory affairs team in India. He has had 25 plus years of experience in the pharma industry and has held leadership positions in regulatory affairs function in some of industry's largest pharmaceutical companies in India, which include Watson Actavis, Lupin, etc. Prior to joining the pharmaceutical industry, Mr. Babu worked as a faculty member and is head of a pharma academic institution. He has been a visiting faculty at various universities in India. Mr. Babu earned a B Pharm from BITS Pilani and an M Pharm with specialization in pharmacology from the Alameen College of Pharmacy, Bangalore, and was the university topper in his batch across all branches. He has also earned an MBA in Human Resources from IGNOU, New Delhi. People development, leadership development, women empowerment, diversity and inclusion, coaching, and mentoring are some of his interests. I would like to invite Mr. K.S. Babu to the stage.
Yeah, thank you, Aritra. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You're on.
Yeah, just give me a minute. In fact, I connected with two devices. I think I'll try to switch off one. Hi, am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're on.
Okay. So video is also okay, right? Good.
Yeah.
Thank you for the generous, kind introduction. Thank you for everyone for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this interesting topic. First of all, I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor of BITS Pilani, all the directors and deans of different campuses, and the organizing committee of this webinar, all the faculty members, students, and all the attendees. Thank you so much for giving time for me to share some thoughts on this topic. I think my screen is visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. First of all, I would like to clarify that, I mean, there was a wonderful presentation by Dr. Vijay Simha before. I think they have been doing a lot of passionate, enthusiastic work, and it's very impressive. And if he's online still, I want to thank him. Very good presentation, sir. I'm very happy to hear the great work that you have been doing. So my topic, basically, I want to cover on some of the opportunities that pandemic has opened for all of us. If you are expecting some information about the vaccine trials that have been going on in Pfizer, or any stuff related to the virus or RNA or the mechanism of action of the vaccine which is under trials, etc., you'll be disappointed. I'm not going to cover any stuff related to science, but I want to really take you all through some of the possible, the futuristic opportunities that lay ahead of all of you. I suppose that most of the attendees are students. So I thought taking you through what is lying ahead, what is in store for all of you in future, I think that probably is very much relevant as you are completing your courses and programs and are likely to step out of the campus into the world very soon. So the title as it was introduced is Pandemic and Promising Possibilities and a Positive Perspective. Starting with a disclaimer, although I work for Pfizer, the content is my own and the views are my own, and they don't represent the position of Pfizer or any of the subsidiaries or leaders or employees. Their contents are based on my personal thoughts, ideas, and opinions. Just I want to, in fact, start with this message. At the end of the message, in fact, I was just contemplating what should be spoken to the students. At the end, I want all of you to leave the room with a message that the future belongs to you all. You're the young, energetic guys. You're the future. The world is actually waiting for all of you. You are the powerhouse, you are the power sources, and you have great chances to build a great future for all of us, building a better world for everybody. Because I feel with the power that you all carry, if there is a mechanism to convert your power, your energy, your enthusiasm into maybe an electricity, I'm sure, in fact, the whole world will never, in fact, will have power cut for several generations. I believe in the power of the youth, and so this is what actually I want all of you to carry in your mind when you step out of the campus, when you leave BITS, when you actually get into the world. You should believe that you have a responsibility, you have a power, and you also have so much responsibility to give so much back to the society and do great things for the world. Now, one thing actually I feel that, I mean, we have been in the lockdown for close to 7 months. A lot of things are shut, and we are, in fact, first time in fact I'm wearing my formal dress today after 6.5 months. One thing actually we have seen during these strange times, challenging times, is that one thing we all learned is resilience. We all have been actually undergoing a lot of strange times, challenging times, including the way we manage the house without any external help, the maids, and on the lighter side, I'm sure, in fact, most of us have become master chefs now, or experts in housekeeping, babysitters, a lot of the things. I mean, jokes apart, but we learned a lot during these times which we never anticipated. That is resilience. But again, humanity actually has survived several disasters if you look into the history. So we all actually, this is a reminder, like I mentioned in my previous slide, that this is a reminder that we can survive this too. This too shall pass. There's a popular quote, when going gets tough, the tough get going. We find different ways of dealing with that. That's the potential of human being. Especially, I want the youth to carry this message, have a reminder that you're, like I mentioned, sources of great power, and with great power, you have great responsibilities, like Spider-Man says, and step into the world, and you really can do miracles and create wonders. Now, what has changed during this pandemic? I mean, I never knew that actually I can work from office. I mean, although we have in Pfizer, we have flexible working hours, there is a flexibility to work from home sometimes. But again, we never knew that actually we can really work comfortably without actually losing our productivity for months actually from home. So the old thinking has really been challenged by the pandemic. And we never knew that actually we can really survive without going to hospitals, without going out for movies, without eating out, without actually meeting anybody, without even seeing our own close kith and kin, friends and family members. So our assumptions have been disproved. And like I mentioned, working from home is one thing, like managing the house, one thing, in the same room, in the hall. In fact, my daughter has online education. My other daughter works for another company. She works online, and I work at the end of this room. We managed actually very well the last 6 months, and I'm sure, in fact, we will be able to manage for even months ahead. So many things actually has been taught actually by this pandemic, like our thinking has been challenged, assumptions have been disproved, the way we look at the things, we live life, everything has changed. And one thing actually I want to mention is adaptability quotient that we actually will learn. You know, actually, several decades ago, people used to talk high about IQ. IQ is very important to be successful. But again, later on, emotional quotient has come. People say that EQ is much more important than IQ. Then now, I think this pandemic taught us that AQ is very important for you to get going in life, to pass through any adversity successfully. Now, I just want to, in fact, take you through how people can really react under stress, under adversities. One day or other, I believe we all are going to face serious adversities. Life is going to knock us down in our life. Earlier, probably in my grandfather's time, it was probably Bengal drought or maybe the flu earlier, decades ago, or a cyclone or tsunami, a lot of other things. We survived several things. But again, different people actually respond or react to the adversities in a different way. I probably, in fact, consider there are 4 types of people based on how they react and respond to these adversities. One kind of people, they give up, they are submissive, they surrender everything, they feel helpless, they feel powerless, and they suffer silently, grudgingly. Second category, sorry, are slightly stronger. I mean, they say that, okay, this is what is my destiny, my fate. I have to somehow manage. So they accept the situation and they move on, of course, with contentment. They are simple-minded, happy people. Another category, like they say jugaad, right, in Indian context, they find ways of managing maybe their business, their lives, their profitability, everything. They try to navigate through creative ways. So they display good adaptability in the situation. The fourth category are game changers. They are the real heroes. They won't actually settle. They won't compromise. They really want to overcome the situation and they want to really bring a change for the world. They fight, they take charge, they're in the driver's seat. They really want to transform everything. So they are the real heroes. They don't mind, in fact, trying all different things, even partnering with different people to leverage each other's strengths. They go, in fact, out of their way, out of their comfort zone in helping others because they feel responsibility for everything around. They take ownership. So they are the real heroes. Now at Pfizer, I want to really, in fact, talk. I'm sure, in fact, all of you are reading in the news that how Pfizer is actually responding to this pandemic. Is actually partnered with BioNTech in developing a vaccine, which is in phase 3 clinical trials now. And I want to really take up some examples because I'm in Pfizer and I see my leadership team, my CEO very closely. So I want to really bring up some examples how heroes actually react, respond to this kind of adverse situations. Number one, Albert Bourla, he's the CEO of Pfizer. He took charge in 2019. He said, just reading, science has won many previous battles with the disease. We believe it will win this one, and we are confident it can eventually win them all. So much positive attitude, can-do attitude, hope for the future, optimism. I really, in fact, admire our CEO, such a wonderful leader. And that's what actually leaders do. They won't give up. They really feel there's always actually light at the end of long, dark tunnel. And they continue their action without giving up their hope, without giving up their actions. Sorry. Second thing, this is actually from an extract from a Forbes article. Then, of course, it talks about there is a race, of course, for COVID vaccine, and it says that why Pfizer may be the best bet to deliver a vaccine for the fall. That's apart. He said that he is going to invest a lot of money in getting the vaccine out. He said, I don't mind even betting on billions of dollars. Even if I lose billions of dollars, it's not going to break us. And he says that you're in such a position of responsibility, and he takes ownership for the world. He says that if not us, who's going to really think of a solution for this problem? Whether you lose, you make losses, whether it works or it doesn't work, after me, it's all uncertain, right? Right? It's a long battle. But again, you cannot really be calculative when you're investing huge money, huge resources into this fight. Financial returns should not drive any decisions. I mean, you can't really be risk averse because the cause is much, much bigger than the loss, even if it doesn't work in the event. So he says that beautifully that $1 billion is not going to break us. I really, in fact, admire his guts and risk and, in fact, the passion, the commitment to everybody, then the courageous steps that he has been taking. I mean, this is again another attribute of leaders when they are responding to adverse situations. Third thing is, he also said that the facilities of Pfizer, the laboratories, the technology, the capabilities, they're open to everybody, to the competitors. He said that this is not the time to compete with each other. The cause is much, much bigger than your commercial advantage or the business priorities. And very interesting, I had never seen in the past, 10 competitors, I mean, along with Pfizer, AstraZeneca, GSK, Johnson Johnson, Merck, Novartis, 10 different companies, they came together with one purpose in mind, for the one cause. They took a pledge that they all stand with science, with integrity. I think I really felt, in fact, so much, in fact, elated when I read about how these pharma giants came together, came forward, signed off this pledge for the patients worldwide. I think this moment has to be marked in the history because such a thing never happened actually, how competitors have came together with alignment. This again, so leadership, display of leadership and how you respond to a major adversity of this sort. Another slide, on this slide, I want to say, apart from, I mean, investing in the vaccine research, Pfizer has been one of the few companies in pharma sector which has actually donated huge money to deal with effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, not only in US, across the world. In fact, they donated $40 million and they displayed the social responsibility and how they care for others in the world. This again, display of great leadership. And you have a passion, you have courage, you want to invest money, and you are leveraging all the strength around. But again, he also has come up with an action plan. In Pfizer, there is a movement called Science Will Win. There's a movement. We hear actually a lot about how this message actually is taken up at different forums. Then Orbit also has, you can find this in LinkedIn. He suggested 5 different ways to help science win. So these are the 5 points you can read. We are going to get the slides. So there's also an action plan. So there is a positive spirit, there is a can-do attitude, there is hope, optimism, there is courage, there is actually appetite for taking the risk, there is actually collaborative spirit to partner with everybody, all the other partners. There is a great action plan. I'm sure this is how you have to really deal with any adversity. Why I'm saying this? I'm not saying this to publicize for Pfizer. Because why I took examples from Pfizer is because this organization that I have been seeing very closely, I couldn't really think of any other, in fact, examples. These are actually current live examples that I really want to share because as energy powerhouses, when you soon step into the world, I want you really to carry these examples, how leaders really respond to adversities, challenges in the life, and take responsibility for everybody else, take the ownership, be in the driver's seat, and drive actions to help the world overcome these challenges. I want all of you to really get this message, which I intend to really share with these examples. Now, that's about our Pfizer leadership and how they have been responding to this. Now, I mean, I already mentioned about it in the earlier slides. When crisis hits us, But again, like I mentioned, there are 4 different categories of responses for different people. One is actually high level. Either you can feel victim, powerless, unlucky, blame on your destiny, blame on your fate, think you are loser. This is what actually life has done to you. This is what actually meant for you. There's one way, give up. And second thing is take up action. Redirect your energy, enthusiasm, effort, time, attention, everything to deal with the situation. So that helps you in converting obstacles into opportunities. That's what is actually my presentation is all about. Crisis, in fact, unlocks new opportunities. Any crisis, any adversity, if you see in past, in the experience of mankind, all adversities, they have really been like universities. They taught us a lot of lessons based on which, in fact, man was able to make great progress, and there's going to be another great experience to, in fact, build greater future for everybody. Now, there are some smart guys. I mean, I see, in fact, these are all actually from based on my observations in the last 6+ months. Recently, in fact, when I went to one Shopper Stop showroom, I had seen one famous apparel brand. But I go to their showroom always to buy shirts and trousers and suits. I seen, in fact, in the display, they had nice, beautifully designed packs of masks, which was never anticipated. I never thought actually that that company, that big brand, really it had, in fact, had an idea to get into making masks. It was a smart move because there is a heavy demand of masks everywhere, and they really considered that as a business opportunity. It's very smart, opportunistic move, great adaptability. I also have seen, like initially it was only probably 1 or 2 brands of sanitizers. But again, now you see there are, I think, at least 50+ brands in the market, right? Within 1 month, I mean, that way our Indian guys are great. They're very quick, very smart in actually picking up the opportunities and right redirecting their energies and their efforts. You see, like several brands, even cosmetic guys, cosmetic manufacturers, they came up with lots of sanitizers in the market because you know that sanitizers are now you use probably several liters in a month, and that's actually a big business opportunity. Then even drug manufacturers, of course, some of the companies, of course, they are working on vaccine in India with some partnership and on their own. Then, but again, many companies actually also looked at what is the business opportunity. Like chloroquine was in demand initially. They said the world needs chloroquine. Then there were several chloroquine manufacturers. I think we exported huge quantity that became a big business opportunity. Then immune boosters, then nutraceutical, somebody said probably vitamin C and vitamin Z, Z are very important. Sorry, zinc is very important. Vitamin C and zinc are very important. Then maybe new formulations of C and Z have come up. Then again, antivirals, maybe existing antivirals, whether it's which are actually proven to give some treatment, some relief. Again, there are companies who got into some in-licensing agreements with the inventors. They started manufacturing APIs or maybe formulations on contract. So adjunct therapies, and there are some of the drugs which are really required. Of course, we also manufacture a product called propofol, which was heavily in drug shortage across the world. Then even we, in fact, we scaled up the production because propofol is actually is a strong sedative which is used in hospital setup for the people who have to be given ventilators. So there was a heavy drug shortage, and even we had to scale up the manufacturing and do a lot of actually optimization of the process and negotiate with FDA for speedy approval of the variations and supplements that we have filed. That we have done that because that is actually in demand, and it was actually even requested by agencies worldwide, right? Even diagnostics, actually, people got into manufacturing diagnostic kits, and a lot of things happened. Then alternate therapies, again, at the same time, Ayurveda, Siddha, and they all actually had seen the boom in their utilization. in the way consumers actually wanted it. Yeah, when there is no therapy, certainly I believe that maybe Chyawanprash is really going to, I take Chyawanprash, of course, even I believe that actually that can really boost your immunity age old, right from maybe generations. That has been a belief. I mean, I take, of course, the Nimbu Pani, and I take that actually the Amla, right? These are all actually age old techniques, right? That we have been hearing from ancestors. When you don't know what works, then probably you believe that semination certainly it can prevent. You don't want to really leave out any stone any stone unturned, right? Then yoga, meditation, so that actually pranayama. Actually, there has been a lot of publicity about pranayama. How it can really strengthen your lungs, it can protect your lungs, all that. So they all actually, alternate therapies actually have rebranded themselves, and then some of the engineering companies I know overnight, in fact, they came up with dispensers, because you cannot use in public setup, you cannot use the ones which you touch and dispense. So they were like standing that dispenser, then booths for showers, then even food delivery companies. In fact, some of the companies, they moved, in fact, because nobody was ordering food. Then they got into delivery of groceries, vegetables, etc. Such a, in fact, creative idea. Then everything actually moved to online. Then your physical shopping, whether it's education or entertainment, then even a lot of events, virtual events even concerts have taken place virtually. In fitness coaching, even dance coaching, a lot of arts have been taught virtually, right? So a lot of things actually have changed. In fact, then interesting thing, some of the automotive industries, they started manufacturing ventilators. It's a great, in fact, idea. Then even in Chennai, I live in Chennai, some of the star hotels, because they lost business, then again, they were delivering food on a phone call. They become food delivery. Then there were some of the star hotels, they focused on food delivery. So what I meant to say is, I mean, that way, in fact, if you really focus on what can be done, how do you deal with the situation? Certainly, I think there will be 101 opportunities. Okay, like Indians are that way very good. Immediately they're able to really tap this potential, business potential and opportunities. Now, apart from that, this is actually a way of repurposing, rerouting, renewing, and rebranding yourself. But again, apart from that, post-pandemic, these are all my thoughts. I think several opportunities can also be opened up. Maybe in pharma and biotech. In fact, I want to start with pharma and biotech, right? Now we suffered, Indian industry suffered because boundaries are locked, imports have suffered. You cannot import from some XYZ countries. Then you had heavy dependence on for some of the APIs or excipients or key starting materials for the APIs, packaging materials. So you really suffered, right? But again, this has become an eye-opener. Like, government actually is promoting, in fact, a lot of, in fact, of course, Make in India has been there again, Atmanirbhar program. The government actually has announced some of the drug parks now with so much incentives, so many incentives. Depending upon the location, if it's northeastern countries, you have different subsidies, different incentives. If it's a different state, the different incentives are different. So they're promoting now developing self-dependence, self-reliance. There's an eye-opener, in fact. So post-pandemic, that is in fact a great opportunity. I think instead of being dependent on other countries for the ingredients, key ingredients, I think we should really be source of, in fact, source of supply for everybody around. Right? I think that there can be great opportunities. New, in fact, companies can get set up. In fact, some of you really, I'm sure, in fact, you want to get into startups, you want to become entrepreneurs. But again, there will be employment opportunities as well as entrepreneurial opportunities. So this actually, you can really keep this in mind. Then vaccine research and biotech research, not many players are there. Even manufacturing capabilities are not, in fact, many in comparison to the synthetic drugs. So that's one area where, in fact, you can really focus on setting up more research capabilities and manufacturing capabilities, either with an alliance or with local alliance or global alliance. right? And actually, one thing that can really be, in fact, no, leveraged actually. Now, Indian industry is very massive, right? I think it's third largest, I think, in volumes and maybe in value, maybe it is 14. I mean, the numbers keep changing. We're one of the highest exporters of generics and even right, some of the ingredients, right? So, but again, there's always opportunity. Maybe you can, the way, in fact, 10 pharma giants came together, they signed off a pledge, they took a pledge together. Forget about the competition. We really want to be together. United we stand, right? If you take that approach, I think we have many companies, thousands of companies. You can really think of setting up some common, probably supply chain networks, distribution networks. Probably you can have some massive packing units, maybe with several lines, which can be really shared. These are my thoughts, which can be, in fact, used by several companies together, right? Then, like even testing facilities. Now you have your own in-house testing facilities. There, of course, there are some public testing laboratories. But why not, in fact, all of you really pool your maybe technologies together, your processes together, right? Then do the knowledge transfer. You can set up some probably massive testing laboratories, which can really be, in fact, one centralized or few centralized testing laboratories that can really operate at a much lower cost and also can really cater to everybody actually in a zone. Maybe you may not be able to do it, maybe one or two centers, but again, you can really think of a zone-wise actually central facilities. I think that you can really think of, right? Then that what happens that can free up your capacities in your facilities, and then you can repurpose the investment into different things. Then of course that will also be giving more employment opportunities when you're really opening up massive facilities for industry. Then engineers actually, in fact, I remember actually earlier I attended one workshop that was organized by BITS Pilani. Then I attended actually from Hyderabad campus. Then I think, I don't know whether the course still has been initiated or not, I'm not sure, but there was a proposal that was I think about 8 years back, a proposal to start one pharmaceutical engineering program. I think BE pharmaceutical engineering, such a wonderful idea. I think BITS only could think of such a creative idea. So engineers, I'm sure there are some engineers on this webinar. You can think of maybe you can start up your own startup, or maybe it's a APA manufacturing unit or key intermediate manufacturing unit, or any, like I mentioned, a packing facility, a supply chain logistic company, right? Or maybe you can even be part of any organization, because the expansions are going to happen. Because the way, in fact, government is now promoting in-house manufacturing capabilities and research capabilities, industry is going to really see a lot of expansion in pharma and biotech sector. Then, so right now, engineers can really take, in fact, opportunity as employment or entrepreneurship. Then nutraceuticals, alternate therapy, they'll continue to be in demand. Like I said, multivitamins, zinc, etc., and the organic products, then Ayurvedic products, Siddha products, they'll continue to be in demand. Then again, like economy actually is, I think, I'm sure that you hear a lot about the downward trend, the way, in fact, economy has been impacted by this pandemic, because with several businesses shut down, right? Now, in fact, to revive the economy, to bring back the glory, I think we really need a lot of techno-commercial guys, techno-economic strategists. So again, there'll be a lot of opportunities for everybody who have technical background and with also who carry a business orientation, business sense. I think this can be one of the opportunities for you to become consultants. Then, now the way, in fact, technology is evolving, in fact, I'm going to touch base on this in the subsequent slides. The cloud computing based services are going to be really in demand, right? Because clinical trials are going to be in massive scale. Then even the way adverse drug reaction monitoring has to happen, everything can really be, all the database, everything can be managed through cloud computing. So For IT guys, again, there's a great opportunity. And these are some of the opportunities that I feel that the pandemic is going to open up in future. Now, in diagnostics and devices, I mean, we don't have many diagnostics and diagnostic units and devices, of course, we have, but again, as compared to pharma, I think we have much more opportunity, greater opportunity. Even in the regulatory perspective, I'm a regulatory guy. Even the regulatory perspective, the regulations can really evolve. I mean, to the global standard. I mean, we have, of course, good regulations, but again, there's always opportunity to revisit and also promote the industry in diagnostics and devices sectors, whether in terms of research or manufacture or export potential. Again, we can really make low-cost diagnostic kits and devices for hospitals, even equipment for hospitals. Export from India to the developing countries, underprivileged populations, and in third world. Right, that can be a great opportunity. Now, on diagnostic, in fact, I have some thoughts. Now, I'm sure, in fact, some of our companies are actually universities are working on rapid test kits. But again, can we really think of, for any test or for the critical test, can we think of a test kit which can really give instant result? Or simplify, now in fact, no portable kits. I mean, no, for a scan, you have to go to a hospital, right? And for an X-ray, you cannot really do it at home. I realized recently I have a pet. When my pet had some problem, orthopedic problem, in fact, the X-ray machine came to my house. Yeah. So then I was thinking, why not actually? I don't know actually whether for human X-rays such a facility is available, but again, I've never heard of it. But again, why not in fact think of some portable kits that can really come to your home and they do the scanning or ultrasound or X-ray or whatever. That can be really one revolution. Cost effective, affordable, I think that's actually, it has to be, because nowadays, in fact, if you undergo maybe your annual checkup, it costs thousands. And if you have to have additional tests, then it adds to the bill. Correct. Probably we can think of, maybe Indians are very good in offering cost-effective technology. I think that can be an opportunity, because the reach has to really be much more wider. Now, in the rural areas, in fact, no, they don't really have opportunity. They have to come to cities when they have to be hospitalized or when they have to undergo a test, even for a scan, simple scan, they have to come to cities. But again, why not? In fact, no, like, in fact, some of the, in fact, in Chennai, Arvind hospitals and Shankarnathria, they come up with some kits, which in fact, no, are carried to villages, and they train some people and they do the simple tests for testing maybe any, maybe the disease in the eye. But again, why can't we really probably extrapolate that to other tests, whether it's a scan or X-ray or anything, right? That also, in fact, can create really more opportunities, employment opportunities when you want to train people to operate on this. Then, now we are talking about a lot of IT infrastructure. I'm going over the time. I hope it's okay, right? Vijay and others, it's okay, right? It's already 1:08. I can continue, right?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Okay, yeah, right. And also, now we are talking a lot about IT, technology, software, so much revolution is happening in the sector. Why can't you actually, the moment actually you take an X-ray or you do a scan or you take an ECG, can you really think of a technology which can really put the report directly on doctor's system, laptop, through maybe cloud computing device or anything? I'm not an IT guy, so in fact, I don't mind saying I'm an IT literate, but again, certainly, I see a possibility of that. That can really be a possibility. So even from villages, the report can directly be, in fact, reach can be into the inbox of a doctor. Then I'm coming to the telemedicine, etc. Then treatment can really become, the opportunities can be much simpler. These are some of the possibilities I see. Then the healthcare services, I mean, we really suffered in many hospitals. I remember actually here, one of my colleagues' father actually, he didn't get a bed anywhere. He really had to run around 6 to 7 hospitals when his father actually had really had been tested positive. Because there were no beds. I'm sure in fact this is the case in many cities. This is very pitiable situation we had to see. Then we didn't have enough infrastructure, leave the beds, even infrastructure, test kits were not available, right? That has been the news, right? It's very pitiable, and it really pains me when I had seen this practically in Chennai. Then, so this is a lesson. I mean, this is a big lesson, but again, you can really, in fact, act on it. In future, can we really think of maybe setting up hospitals with several beds, not only in cities, even in rural areas, right? This is a lesson, actually, that big lesson, costly lesson we learned from COVID-19. Mobile hospitals. I never heard of mobile hospitals. Maybe I'm ignorant, but again, I have not seen even in Chennai. I don't know about Mumbai and other big cities. Mobile hospitals can be, why not, right? Even in fact, why can't you even think of maybe redesigning your apartment to make it compatible with maybe if you have to be given oxygen, if you have to be given actually a bedside, maybe treatment, why can't we even really even the builders, in fact, no, real estate builders can think of probably the futuristic flats, apartments, which are in fact compatible with all these actually in-house hospitalization demands, correct? That's a mobile hospital is one thing. Then again, I missed to include it in the point, but again, I want to include in that. Maybe think of maybe future real estate as, in fact, as a convertible hospital private ward, right? Then even ICUs. Then increased employment opportunities. Certainly, in fact, when you are expanding hospitals, even every village will have one high-tech hospital. If you think of that, right? If there's a dream, maybe there's a dream. In fact, I dream of India, the future India. Then there's going to really open up a lot of opportunities. Doctors, surgeons, nurses, pharmacists, counselors, right? Psychiatrists, even you need extra people to operate this equipment, etc. Right? Such a beautiful future to imagine. Then now telemedicine and video consultation started. In fact, I always wanted to wait 2 hours with a specialist in Apollo Hospital and wait for my turn. Then even sometimes I take leave and actually even wait for 2 to 3 hours. I take an appointment probably weeks ahead, sometimes months ahead with their busy doctors. All things actually, COVID has really challenged all this, right? Now teleconsultation has started. Now, in fact, Apollo started, many hospitals started telemedicine, video consultation. I think now we just, in fact, no, have not explored to the biggest extent. Now, if the technology and infrastructure is ramped up to such a level that even from a village, the remote village, an old lady can really connect with a doctor in Apollo Chennai or Apollo Mumbai or Apollo Delhi. Probably they will also have opportunity to choose a doctor anywhere in the world. In fact, I'm talking about only India. Maybe why not people in the world? If somebody can afford, they don't have to really fly to travel to US or Europe, right? Of course, there's a next step. Maybe within India, if you think of an old lady from a rural place, if she can really connect with a doctor in Apollo, Chennai or Mumbai, as she wishes, and maybe have the treatment consultation through video call. The technology, the bandwidth, everything has to be really of that class, not that top class, right? Outstanding, right? Can we really think of that? I think there's an opportunity, right, to make all these a possibility. Now, in education, of course, my daughter, of course, she is in 12th grade, and she only enjoyed few days of holidays, and again, she was called back for education online. And it was not a happy thing for the kids. I mean, she was always grumbling initially, but again, she is used to it in the last 6 months. But again, challenge, actually, we never thought actually, even in our companies, corporates, we always actually loved the training in a classroom kind of setup, not virtual. I mean, I myself, I always loved, in fact, a classroom kind of training setup when presenter is in front of you face to face. But again, we really came a long way. Online schools, my daughter gives online exams. She switches on her camera. The teachers are watching so that she doesn't copy or she doesn't open the textbook. She doesn't use a calculator. But again, she keeps writing. So how we really have came a long way, right? Which we never, in fact, imagined in past. Then online mode, I have a lot of interesting stuff to share, right? Why can't it be an option to all? Especially somebody who's physically challenged, who cannot really travel maybe hours in a bus, or don't have transportation facilities, or somebody has special needs, maybe want to maybe take the classes from the bed, right? Why can't really, in fact, make it a reality for them? Now they, in fact, they drop out from school. You can really, in fact, change the way, in fact, education is, in fact, no, offered to everybody in India, right? Maybe students should have an option to register for any school, irrespective of where he or she is there. The child should be able to really register for a school. A Chennai girl should be able to register for a school in Delhi or maybe in Dehradun, right? Anywhere, right? Teachers also now, in fact, some of the teachers I know, in fact, especially ladies, in fact, most of the teachers are ladies, right? If you see, look at the numbers, right? They drop out. In fact, recently, my daughter lost one wonderful teacher because she had to really relocate to Kerala to take care of her parents. Then, but again, it's such a shame that actually technology didn't really allow her to really stay in the job, right? But again, right, people can really continue to stay. They can teach from anywhere. Then, but again, when I'm imagining that a student can really register for a school anywhere in India, then you also actually have to think of maybe education system also have to be redesigned such a way that maybe same syllabus, same curriculum, same way of teaching, same pattern across India, maybe except for the languages, right? Maybe in some places, up to some classes, maybe medium of education, lower classes. But again, why can't you really think of one centralized system, syllabus, and assessment? Maybe the exams, everything is online now. When students post their answer paper, that can really go to anywhere actually in India and can be assessed by anybody. Right? Why can't really think of such a nice centralized system? So many web-based courses. In fact, no, now LinkedIn actually started offering a lot of, they published a lot of courses, so many certifications have been opened up. In fact, some of the people, in fact, they really took advantage. The 6 months, many people, they saved a lot of time because they could really cut down on traveling. They could really manage their work hours. I have seen some smart guys, they registered for several courses online, they completed, they added to their CV. Somebody said, if you have not done that during this pandemic, if you're not actually registered and got some diplomas, online diplomas and online certifications, that means you missed an opportunity. You wasted 6 months, right? I mean, some smart guys have really done that, thoughtful guys. But again, this is going to be a norm in future. Many, in fact, institutes are going to really offer this kind of web-based courses certification in the future. Then tutorials for everything. One of my colleagues, she's a dancer. She used to, in fact, take classes earlier in the weekends. Now she started taking every day through virtual mode, right? Dance classes. Now everything, now even fitness, cooking, arts, a lot of things actually I have seen, in fact, piano classes online, right? So everything is going to be, all tutors are going to be available online. Maybe you can even, I know in fact some of my, maybe people in my acquaintances, they've been teaching even to students across the world. That will become more and more now common, maybe in future. So teachers is a great opportunity. Now, employment opportunity, I mentioned that women leaving jobs, it's a shame that when they get married, they have to leave the place to follow their husband. I mean, they have to start planning family, or when they have emergencies at home, family demand, they have to give up the jobs. It's such a shame, and maybe that shouldn't be really the case in future. Then, but again, for all these, you need to really have super hi-fi network technology. It should be really revolutionary, outstanding, futuristic. The infrastructure has to be really probably ramped up to probably 10x, right? Then this really this dream can really be a reality, right? Then what happens when you do that? When you really connect entire India, so such a centralized system, even the remote villages are connected. Then why can't you really bring down the illiteracy rates? Student dropouts, students can really probably take classes at night, work in the day in the remote places, who really have to earn their daily bread. Why can't really, in fact, think of classes at the hours which are comfortable to them? Then they can continue studies as well as continue supporting their families. Whether it's agriculture, they can continue to work in the farms, in the fields, and take education, take the classes in the night. Why can't you really think of that? Such a wonderful future to imagine. Now I have, in fact, one radical thought. Now, in fact, people go to foreign university. There's so much demand. You give SAT or you give GRE, right? There's so much demand. Indians are in queue to study in foreign universities. Why can't you really, in fact, no? Think of, in fact, a possibility where Indians, without traveling, being in India, can register for Harvard or Stanford. Why not is a possibility, right? Or Cambridge. It can be a possibility. I think that should really be the next step, actually, for us when you are reimagining the world, reimagining a future, reimagining India. I think all this should really be a possibility. Okay.
Thank
I'm
you,
sure, in
sir.
fact, yeah.
Thank you, sir, for the speech. But due to shortage of time, we will have to wrap up this morning session.
Yeah. Can I take in next 5 minutes? An additional 5 minutes?
So, if you could wrap up quickly, that'll be good.
Yeah.
A few
Right.
concluding statements.
Yeah, sure. Now I almost am done with that. These are other sectors where, in fact, I thought some opportunities for maybe the future, right? And you can go through these slides. I'm going to share this, my last slide, as far as the possibilities are concerned. Some concluding comments. To achieve all these, the backbone is technology, infrastructure, digitalization, right? Automation, right? Plus access to everybody throughout India, even in the remote places, and affordability, where a 5G or 6G network has to be affordable by everybody across India. Then, irrespective of what you do, I think we all have to really get used to operating these high-tech gadgets. You cannot really be a technical illiterate, even if you are in a non-tech field. So that's what actually is a biggest need, and really, I think can really, in fact, being a IT player in the world, strong IT player in the world, I think we can really make it a reality. Now, these are the final words. I mean, COVID has challenged our mindset, attitude, beliefs, the way we used to think about everything, the way we used to live, everything has been challenged. Then need of the hour is now with all the lessons that we learned, think of actually get the habit of thinking unconventionally and be prepared. There can be another COVID in future, right? But I can be prepared. I think initial preparedness for a possible disaster, then you can really overcome with relatively much more ease, right? Then upgrade yourself constantly in the technology, otherwise you'll become outdated. So this is my own quote. I want to in fact conclude with this quote. To summarize, the future belongs to those who are visionary, dream impossible things, and strive to realize the dreams. And with this, I conclude my presentation, my thoughts, and my contact details are here. And feel free to reach out to me for any questions or for any additional thoughts. I know, in fact, we don't have time for Q&A, but again, I want to conclude with this slide. And thank you all once again for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts about how I imagine the India and the world in future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir, for coming and giving the talk and for your insights. With that, we come to an end for the first session of the day. I would like to thank all of our distinguished speakers for their enlightening talks. I would also like to thank our participants for attending and helping making this webinar a success. I would also like to remind the participants about the Idea Challenge, which is sponsored by Visit. This provides our participants with a platform to take their learnings from the webinar to the real world. Participants are invited to identify a single problem statement from those discussed throughout the webinar and propose a business plan solution. Note that it is compulsory for participants to attend all sessions of the webinar to stand a chance to participate in the competition. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind those participants who have not filled the Google form to do so now. The link for the form will be posted again on the chat box. On a closing note, I would like to remind you that we will be commencing the third sessions of the webinar at 3 p.m. on the same Zoom call link. The session will be on startups in healthcare, which is a very interesting topic, and will feature distinguished speakers such as Mr. K. Chandrasekhar, Mr. Vaibhav Singh, and Mr. Sridhar Ramanathan. Looking forward to see you in the afternoon, 3 p.m. same link. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.